Good morning, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are going to make pot roast the way I do it in the crock pot. Kind of a different recipe. As you can tell, I'm a little bit sick with the crud that's going around town today, so let's get started. Okay, you want to let your crock pot get a little bit warm first, so I'll put some olive oil in here. I've had it turned on for a little bit. I'm going to add in 2 chopped up garlic cloves. You can add more or less depending on how much you like, but I don't know if you know it, but garlic has antibiotic and antiviral properties, and I'm hoping it's going to help clear all this up. This is half of a chopped up pretty large onion, and you don't want the chopped up pieces to be too small because they'll get mushy before your roast is done. Then we're going to add in 1 package of dry ranch dressing mix mixed in with 1 cup of water and just a little bit of olive oil. Make sure we get all that goodness out of this measuring cup. Give it a little bit of a stir. And we're going to add in 1 can of golden mushroom soup. Come on. I know the golden mushroom soup and the ranch dressing doesn't sound like a good combination, but believe me, it is really good once it gets all cooked together. You don't want to put in too much liquid because as this cooks, it's going to produce its own juice in there. But I will add just a touch more water because that looks like it's a little bit too thick. And you can add whatever kind of other seasonings you think you may like in yours, but we're going to get creative in just a second. Now in goes the roast. Now it's just my husband and myself, so we will have dinners for about 3 days on this one roast. And then whatever roast is left, I will put in a bag and then put that bag inside of a gallon-sized freezer bag in my freezer. When the bag is full, then it's time to make Brunswick stew. And you can put any kind of meat in there, chicken, pork, roast, whatever you have. When you have something that's just not quite enough left to make a meal, then you put it in that bag and soon you have enough for Brunswick stew. The next thing is potatoes. I have 3 or 4 cut up potatoes in here, just however many you think you're going to need. Some peeled and cut up carrots. And then we're going to add some whole pepperoncini with just a little bit of the juice. This is a little bit spicy, but not terribly spicy. It just gives it a tiny bit of a kick when you put it in there. Oh, and I'm making a mess, of course. So I'm going to put 2. You want to get them on top of the roast. You don't want them under there because once the roast is done cooking, you want to pull them out and pour just a little bit of the juice on there. And I have made a huge mess. Okay, I'm going to put this in my crock pot on high for 6 hours. If you want, you can cook it on low for 8 hours, but my husband has to go to work this evening, so I need to get this done. And we will be back in a little bit to show you the final product. Okay, while we're waiting on our roast, which is still in the crock pot, we're going to make some biscuits to go with it. I have already got my self-rising flour. It's probably about 1.5 cups in here, about a half a stick of butter. But you really have to just get your hands in there until the butter crumbles into the flour. Just kind of mush it around with your fingers. until it's nice and crumbly in there. Don't know if that's going to show up well on the camera or not. And then into that we're going to add some buttermilk. I have a cup here. I don't think it's going to take nearly that much. Put it in a little bit at a time. I know most people will stir this with a spoon, but stirring it with a fork makes it be a little bit more fluffy. You just keep adding your buttermilk until you get it to the right texture. As you're mixing it, you make sure to bring up what's on the bottom. That way you don't have the bottom of your bowl full of dry dough. Now I'm not going to make very many since it's just my husband and myself. And if you can see over here, I already have my cast iron skillet hot with some butter in it, ready to go in the oven. The oven is preheated to 400. And I think that's about good. We're going to turn this onto a floured mat. You don't want to overwork your dough because then you're going to get a really tough, icky biscuit. I'm trying out these new mats I got. I'm not so sure I'm going to like them yet. They wiggle around quite a bit. You don't have to use a roller. I have one. It's just I don't need to use it for this small amount of biscuits that I'm making today. And how thick you roll it out really just depends on how thick you want your biscuits to be. I don't know if you can tell about how thick that is. I don't happen to possess a biscuit cutter, so I usually use a glass or a ramekin. Again, that depends on how big you want your biscuits to be. It's important that your pan is warm and buttered, so that way they don't stick to the pan. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I prefer to cook anything I can in cast iron. It comes out better. That one looks a little funny around the edges. And you just keep folding and smoothing it over and cutting it out until you run out of dough. And this is just a basic biscuit recipe. If I'm making something where I want to add a little flavor like garlic to it, you can add in minced garlic. You can go the other way with it and add in brown sugar and make it a much sweeter biscuit. But this is just a basic biscuit dough. Now I'm going to use my flour covered hands and put these in the oven. Hey, welcome back. Our roast is done. We have our potatoes, carrots. This is fried corn. I'll show you that in another video later. Our homemade biscuits, and you can see how tender this roast comes out. You can lift it up with a fork. There's lots of gravy in there, and this is going to be delicious. See you next time.